from Dallas, Texas. And Ellen, I give you the Ellen tribute. Did you do this remember? We already did it.
Okay. I don't pay good attention. Good morning, my friends. My name's Ellen Cassidy, and I'm an enthusiastic, boundlessly grateful Al-Anon. I am so happy to be with you today. This is my first speaking to a room thing in 2 years. You have no idea how I've missed you. I have missed you. I am as grateful as a human can be for Zoom, because the truth of the matter is I fall in love with people in little rectangles. They don't have to be near me. I can just feel them in there. So that has been life-saving. And with Zoom, I got to speak to people in Poland, people in Russia, people in Italy, people in all over. Never would have happened without Zoom. And I am, that is such a miracle that it's got to be God at work. It has just got to be. I am grateful to be with you today. And I'll tell you, I was supposed to go out last September. Delta happened. I was supposed to go out in November and something else happened. I don't know what it was, but that didn't work. Then I was supposed to go in January and Omicron happened and that didn't work, or something else. Oh no, it was snow and ice in the Dallas area and I couldn't drive there. That's what was happening. That's what it was. And then February was Omicron. But this one, when Ben asked me, these are the kind of weekends that I love best of all. To have some of the alcoholics I love more than anything in the world talk about themselves for an hour at a time. I'm telling you. And some of these, I won't name names, but some of these are the ones I love best. I said, I'm coming. I am coming. I will be there. Can I sit up close and look up their noses? Because that makes me very happy. I did it. Did it with Jennifer last night because I love Jennifer too. She's my kind of girl. So I come to you today with half a voice, and we'll just hope that I can get all the way through this. I introduced myself as an Al-Anon, and one thing that hadn't changed in 2 years is my need to explain that. Of course, explaining is how I got to Al-Anon, because I thought if I could get you to listen long enough, then you'd understand. And then you'd see that my way really was the best way, and you'd go, oh, you're right. Yay! They say, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Well, aren't they the same thing? And then someone said, do you want to be happy or do you want to be married? Because you can't always be right and be married. And the last one that I heard that I loved was, do you want to be right or do you want to be free? And I want to be free. Before I knew the third step by heart, I wanted the freedom that it promised me. That's what I wanted. So when I got to Al-Anon, people would say, well, what do you want? Well, I don't know what I want. I've been married to several alcoholics. I'm the child of, the grandchild of. Turns out I'm also the mother of, and the grandmother of. But I had gone through the years figuring out what I didn't want. I didn't know what I wanted, but I figured out what I didn't want. And I said, I can just tell you what I don't want. I don't know why you needed to know that, but apparently you did. It's one of those little places that it's like the halls in this place. I've been lost 3 times already. They need breadcrumbs or something, or a rope they can tie on to you and you can just follow it back. Anyway, when I got to Al-Anon, what I didn't want to be was Al-Anon. But I never wanted to be where I was, doing what I was doing with the people I was with. I always wanted to be someplace else with somebody else doing something else, because I'm sure it's better there. Learned in Al-Anon, no such place is there. When I get someplace different, it's just here all over, because I brought myself to that place. I brought myself with all my fears and my filters and my histories and my experiences. And I still have this sense sometimes of, I can hardly wait till I get there. And I'm through whatever this is. Well, the good thing I learned there is everything comes to pass. Nothing comes to stay. But it doesn't come to leave me the same. Everything comes with a lesson for me if I'm willing to pay attention and ask for help. Today, what I wanted to be at one point for a long time actually was I wanted to be alcoholic. Because it was painfully obvious to me that alcoholic women had more fun than we did. I couldn't pass the physical, however. I tried. God knows I tried. But that out-of-control business is just more than I could handle, you know. I remember I was sure at one point that I absolutely was alcoholic. I'd been speaking for a little while, and I thought, this is going to be humiliating when I have to turn. Ugh. And I called an alcoholic friend of mine that I trust dearly, and I said, I just hate to tell you this, but I do believe I'm alcoholic. And then she went back to a point in my life, it was about 4 or 5 years before that at that point, and she said, when that was going on, did it ever occur to you to just blow the whole thing up and go get drunk? No. Who would have taken care of the babies if I did that? She said, not to worry. You're not. Today I know what Al-Anon isn't. Al-Anon isn't because I'm married or love somebody who has alcoholism. That doesn't make me Al-Anon. There's a thing, the word that's popped up in Al-Anon rooms in the last little bit, and they say, my qualifier is. I get the twitch when I hear that. Because, you know what? The alcoholics all left me. I didn't leave them. They left me. And I was crazier when they were gone than I was when they were there. I am my own qualifier. It's the reason the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous makes sense to me. I think like that. I feel like that. The solutions I had were different, but I think like that. I feel like that. And it says if I do think like that and feel like that, the book will show me the way out too. I'm an Al-Anon, not because of the people I loved. I'm an Al-Anon because I have a 12-step recovery program that I practice like my life depends on it. I am convinced today of the fatal nature of my disease. I'm an Al-Anon because I go every Monday night to my committed meeting. If you want to find me, you come Monday night at 6:15 to the Addison Al-Anon family group meeting, and that's where I'll be. Even on Zoom. We are scuttling back into our room 2 at a time. And the problem is, as always, I have fallen in love with little squares, little rectangles, and I miss my rectangle people when I go to the room. So I'm just having to do 2 and 2 right now. Love you people, love you people. Want to stay here, don't want to put shoes on, staying home. I'm an Al-Anon because I have a sponsor who knows everything there is to know about me. I've never told her anything that surprised her, like my poor mother. My mother would go, Nell goes, I realized 2 weeks ago that I was actually been living in my house for 2 years, and I'm going to have to get out. So I tried on everything I had in the closet. Nothing fit. Nothing. Not because I've lost an amazing amount of weight or gained an amazing amount. I've shrunk in 2 years. I've shrunk. And so packing yesterday was torture. Absolute torture. The clothes and the... So I'm here today in Nell's jacket, her hand-me-down jacket, my funeral skirt, and a lovely little T-shirt from Amazon. And I'm happy here. She said, when you put the jacket on tomorrow, remember that that's me putting my arms around you. Yeah, you gotta love her. She'll be 92 in May. We are celebrating 60 years of Al-Anon with her, the end of April. I am grateful beyond words for my mom and Nell. I took friends, as I have done since she started sponsoring me 20 plus years ago, gather up a group of my sponsees, and we pile in the car, and we drive 2.5 hours north to where she lives in Waurika, Oklahoma. Honey, you got to be on your way to Waurika to get there, because it's on the way to nowhere, you know. Just to have a meeting with her. I'm an Al-Anon. I'm so grateful there is such a thing as Al-Anon to be. When I was 17, Mama diagnosed me. She diagnosed me as boy crazy. The place Mama sent me to be safe was Lubbock, Texas. Well, in 1963 in Lubbock, Texas, the ratio of males to females was 7-1. The briar patch. Throw me in there. Throw me in there. She sent me to get an education, and I went looking for him. I was always looking for him. I always had a him because you couldn't be himless. But he can't be that good. Look who he's with. So I'm always looking for a more, better, different one, you know. And it took me 6 months to find him, but I found him. I knew when I saw him, he was it. He was the one. And, oh, lucky, lucky me. The only problem was he was married to somebody else and had 2 kids and was 60 pounds overweight. But none of that seemed insurmountable to me. I've never liked the easy ones, you know. I don't like the ones that go, oh, you're so cute. Can I? No, get away. I want the ones you have to fight for, the ones you have to earn, the ones you have to make love you. I get a rush every time I do that. I think I could do it again if my heart was in it, but menopause. I like the energy back, but you're all cute. You're just cute as you can be. One of the things I love about being up here is I get to look at you all in the faces. And there's some of you, I think, honey, if you were just a little older, I was just a little younger. Well, a year later, we shed the wife, the 2 kids, and the 60 pounds because I'm a total redoer when I get those little fixer-uppers. And I had my prize, lucky, lucky me. I need to tell you, he was not drinking when we started dating. I didn't cause it. I can't cure it. I can't control it. I can't change it. I can't do anything about it, but I'm just reporting. There was something about the mix of us that made that come up. Anyway, we were married 6 months when he hit me the first time. He was drunk when he hit me. He was drunk every time he hit me. I did not grow up in a family where adults hit each other. So the reaction I had to it wasn't anything anybody taught me. I thought it up all by myself in my fabulous little solution center here in my brain. My sponsor told me one time, she said, honey, your problems are not really your problems. Your solutions are the problems. The best thing I could think to do was double dog dare him to do it again. Oh, yeah, I thought that was a power move, you know, when I did it. Outweighed me by about 100 pounds, you know. And it didn't take any more insanity on his part to hit me the second time than it did the first time. And that's how we lived. I can't tell you when this happened. I can't tell you anything about the time length there. I can tell you as a result of doing lots of inventories, of doing a lot of talking about it, because the energy's all gone out of it. The power is all gone out of that. It's not there anymore. What I discovered was every time he hit me and I believed what he said, which was if I hadn't done what I did, he wouldn't have to do what he did. Every time I hit me and he believed what he said, which was I deserved that. Every time he hit me and I got up the next morning and I looked at myself in the mirror, black eye, split lip, bloody nose, and said to myself, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. I'll just stay home another day and another day and another day and nobody will know. But every time that happened, a piece of me left and another piece and another piece and another piece until there was nobody left who could stand up and say, you can't treat me like this. I'm God's precious child. So, you say, how did you get out of there? I bet you could guess. Another man came along. And he had beat me the last time in public. Several people had seen it. Of course, most people knew what was going on, even though I wouldn't talk about it and tried to hide it. But that's hard to hide. And this guy came to me, he said, you don't have to live like that. And I love you. Now, when I came to Al-Anon, I had one feeling, and that was hurt. Everything hurt. Everything hurt. Because had to turn feelings off to live where I was living. So everything just hurt. And my sponsor would say to me, we'd talk about something, she'd say, how do you feel about that? And I'd go, oh, it just hurts. So she made me get it was a big magnetic sign back then. I have a little tiny one in my refrigerator now. Big sign with the caricatures on it, And it says, if you feel like this, if you look like this, you're surprised. Oh, that must be surprise I'm feeling. So when I'd tell her, I don't know how I feel about that, she'd have to say, go to the refrigerator, because it was the only place big enough to put the big sign, I'm just telling you, trying to learn to deal with your feelings by going to the refrigerator is really not a good idea, but there's a whole another 12-step program that might help you. One day I had a new feeling, and I knew she'd be pleased. I'm telling you, people pleased and saved my life. Saved my life until it started making my world smaller again. And I wanted to please her. I wanted to belong. I never felt like I belonged any place in my whole life. And I so wanted to belong with you. And I had a new feeling. I could hardly wait to tell her. I called her up and I said, I have a new feeling. She said, great. What is it? And I said, fear. She said, what are you afraid of? And I said, is that necessary? Do you actually have to nail it down? Because once you let fear out, I was afraid of everything. I was afraid of everything. I was afraid everywhere. I come from a line of sponsorship that believes you should chase fears to their root cause. They're generally not what you think they are. There's something underneath there, and maybe something under there, and maybe something under there. And what my sponsors have done is offer me their ears. I'll stay on the phone while you talk it out. I tend to process with my mouth open. And there's something magic about another set of ears to hear me. So this sounds like it should have taken a few minutes or maybe a day or maybe two, but I bet it took weeks. I said, okay, I know what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid he's going to leave me. This is the early 80s. My first meeting was November 3rd in 1981. This is the early 80s, and treatment centers are coming into their own, and we're getting a lot of people in our meetings who are being sentenced to Al-Anon before they can see their children or their spouses. And I was getting a lot of their words. The phrase, you could hear the old-timers' eyes flat back in their head, when they said, I'm just dealing with my inner child. That was what I heard was fear of abandonment. I said, I have fear of abandonment. I said, I'm afraid he's going to leave me. She said, really? Why? And I said, because he said he's going to leave me. And she said, honey, let me tell you something. The way to tell whether an alcoholic is leaving is if he's gone. She said, you have to learn to turn off the sound and look at the picture. She said, the sound will confuse you. The picture will tell you the truth. And don't try to read their lips, because they mean well, but they can't follow through. And she said, okay, let's just say he leaves. Now what? Okay, let's say he leaves. Now I'm going to find myself in a situation I have avoided my entire life, being alone. Do not want to be alone. Never been alone. Even now, and this is just the way it's turned out, at 76 years old, I've only lived alone for 3 years in my life. How did that happen? Well, I love alcoholics. They love me. That's what happens. And she said, okay, let's say you're alone. Now what? Well, I'm afraid he's going to leave. I'm afraid he's going to leave me alone. If he leaves me alone, I'm going to have to deal with this sense of myself that I have stuffed down in the back of my head most of my life. And if I let it come up, I know what it's going to tell me. It's going to tell me I'm not enough. I'm not smart enough, thin enough, young enough, old enough, rich enough, whatever enough. I am not enough. I am not enough. There is something the matter with me. I'm not enough. And if I'm not enough, I'm not going to be able to take care of myself. And I'm not going to be able to take care of my kids. We'll die. And when someone said, I love you to me, what I heard was, I won't leave you. So when this one said, and I love you, That was the way I dated back in the day. Don't need you, got one. And I knew what I'd done wrong the first time. I really did know what I'd done wrong, and I made a list in my head of what number 2 needed to be like, because I always knew there'd be a number 2. And this guy was perfecto. You would have loved him. He was the right age, the right coloring, the right humor, the right job. As long as I was working 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, it was the right job. And at the right family, the whole thing. He had one tiny little flaw, and that was that he didn't come home nights. But I'm thinking a couple of home-cooked meals and a little, and I got him. Back in the day, that's how I marked my territory. So a year later, we got married because I always get my man. And for a while, he was coming home every night. So I'm pretty sure I'm doing it right, because I don't know if you know this or not, but I have the power to make people come home and not come home. And I'm pretty sure I'm doing it right because he's coming home. It's all about me. And then the night came, he didn't come home anymore. What he didn't know is I was dealing with a subset of alcoholic I'd never encountered before, which is the bar drinking variety. The kind who is as addicted to the place and the people in it as they are to the substance alcohol. And he didn't come home. And I lay on the floor of the bathroom and I cried. Because I was sure he saw the 2 pounds I gained, and that's why he didn't love me anymore, and that's why he wasn't coming home. And then I thought, stupid me. This morning he said, "What's for dinner?" And I said, "Roast beef." Everybody knows pork chops are his favorite thing. So I determined that from now on, when he said, "What's for dinner?" I'm always going to say pork chops. And then when I get him home and get him inside and lock the door, I can tell him the truth about what we're having for dinner. And then I decided what I needed to do was go sit on the sofa and wait. Now, if you're in training for Al-Anon, you must pass Waiting 101. And the way you know you're in Waiting 101 is if when you're waiting, you can't do anything else. Can't talk on the phone, can't wash the clothes, can't read a book, can't watch TV, can't do anything. The kids would come up and they'd go, "Mom," and I'd go, "Shh, I'm waiting." And that's because when I'm waiting, I'm listening. And I'm listening for the sound of those tires. There are 44 bazillion other tires on the planet. I don't care. I could pick mine out in a mall parking lot. And I have the same reaction to the sound of those tires as I've heard an alcoholic say a drink did for them. I'd hear those tires and I'd go, "Ah, it's all going to be okay. He's home now. It's all going to be okay." I may have to kill him when he walks in the door, but at least he would die at home. And I didn't want to be divorced again. I thought widow was preferable at that point. When I came to Al-Anon, I fell into this group by God's grace. This group of Al-Anons who, there was no edict back then that you couldn't read the big book, so we talked about the big book. And if you're AA and you don't realize what that's about, in an attempt to keep Al-Anon, Our World Service, whoever has decided that we can only refer to literature in our meetings that is written by Al-Anons. And Chapter to the Wives is not written by an Al-Anon. I'm just saying. We were studying the big book at Group of Sponsees in my house, and we had the sweetest, dearest little woman in there. She's just so sweet and kind all the time. And we were reading the book, just a paragraph at a time, and we finally get to the chapter on the wives. She came back the next week, and she said, he's written such beautiful words, such uplifting words, such healing words. And then comes this chapter. She said, I'd like to get a razor and cut those pages out of the book. It's a big reaction. But anyway, we did the big book. And they had a routine, their Al-Anon routine. You didn't have to do it, but they went to 2 Al-Anon meetings a week and 1 open AA. And that was part of the requirement. How grateful I am that I got to go to open AA meetings. Because listening to an alcoholic I'm not emotionally involved with yet tell talk about the disease and themselves, I started to tell the difference between the man and the disease. I started to tell the difference between won't and can't. And one of the things I heard in there was that 99 times out of 100, they come home. It could be that day or the next week or 3 years later, but they come home. And he came home. He was 3 hours late and drunk, but he came home. And I met him at the door like a 3-year-old who's been crying all afternoon, and you've said, stop it. I was at that, place. You remember that place where your eyes are all swollen and you can't see and there's snot everywhere. It takes days for your swelling on your face to go down. It's very attractive. I can't imagine why he drank. Anyway, and I asked the stupidest question. Second stupidest. Stupidest is, have you been drinking? Second stupidest is, where have you been? Because I have this, I used to think it was a talent. I think it's a curse. My head makes up stories all by itself. All by itself. I don't have to bid it to, I can't stop it, actually. Read a great thing the other day that said, the only power strong enough to rein in my imagination is the light of grace. And that is the truth. And I was grace-free back then. My head had made up a story about what happened to him. Those stories are never nice. They're always painful. I'm in the middle. I'm suffering in it if I'm not dying. Something is happening bad to me because of what they're doing. And so the story in my head was probably something like he was driving his car out in the country. I don't know why there's no reason for him to be there, but that didn't matter to my head. He's out in the country driving his car, and the car blows up, and it blows his car into a ditch and blows him over someplace else, and he's badly injured and dying, but he's not quite dead yet. Cars are going by, but they can't see him because he's down in the ditch. And with his dying breath, he's calling me, and he's going, Ellen, Ellen, I love you. And now wild animals are coming and tearing off body parts and strewing them in the forest. And it may be 7 years before we can identify the body, but I take it to the bitter end, in my head. I did that, was telling that part of my story, and in a hotel like this, and the doors back there were open, and earth people were walking by. I saw this guy walk by, and he went, 911, 911. Craziest person here. I have the ability to hold opposing thoughts in my head, and they never touch. Truth is, I knew I knew where he was. I knew he was drinking. He said, I was drinking. You knew where I was. He didn't tell me where he was, but I knew where he was. He went 3 places: home, work, the trap room, drinking. But I have the ability to hold opposing thoughts, and they never touch. And the 2 thoughts were, number 1, he loves me more than anything in the world. And literally my life depended on that, it felt like. And number 2, he's in the trap room drinking. Now, if this is true, then this one can't be true. And in my diseasiness, I'd rather wish him dead than know the truth. That's what my stories did. And he said something to me along the lines of, you certainly have worked yourself up into a state. And eventually he would say to me, I don't know why I stay married to you. And I would say, I'm sorry. Now, what's wrong with the picture? He's 3 hours late and drunk, and I'm apologizing. I have an addiction. I used to say it was just mind-altering men, but it's not limited to men. Anybody can play with my brain. You don't even have to be present to win. I can do it in your name and just blame it on you. Well, we lived like that for quite a while. And I ended up in Al-Anon. It's a lovely story. One time when I have more time, I'll tell you. But anyway, I ended up in Al-Anon. And that is nothing short of God's grace that happened, that I ended up in Al-Anon. I tried to combat the alcoholism. I told him he was an alcoholic. He'd already told me that. I'm just an alcoholic. I'd go, no, you can't possibly be alcoholic. Yes. I tried all that. And then, in about 2.5 years after I came into Al-Anon, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I was 38 years old, no history of it in my family, too young, no reason I should have breast cancer. But it turns out that in our room, in the Al-Anon room, we have an innumerable number of stress-related diseases. living in active alcoholism, sober, is stressful. Alcoholics have moment blessed of blackouts, not us. We're wide awake taking notes. When I came to Al-Anon, I was taking notes because I'd say, you haven't been home in 3 days. And he'd say, Ellen, what is the matter with you? I was home last night. And I came to Al-Anon like a lot of people do, twitching. That's how you know. Well, that's a lovely place to be. Isn't that nice? So anyway, here I am. I've sponsored so many people, women, who have had cancer someplace or other. There were studies back then that said it was a stress-related disease. 70% of it is probably familial, but there's another chunk of it that's not, that's stress-related. I have lived my life by a couple of lines out of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. One of them is actually in Dr. Paul's story that says, nothing but nothing happens by mistake in God's world. That's the God I want. The one who says, I know what you did and it's okay. It's not going to be a mistake. I can make something wonderful come out of that. I can. Just step back. My sponsor says, why don't you get up in the morning and say, God, amaze me, and watch to see what God does. I've loved listening to the speakers so far because they talked about this God who runs to meet me right where I am, who doesn't have open arms, comes to meet me. So happy that I've recognized I'm home and I'm safe. So the other line is the last column of the 4-step inventory that basically says, what was your part? Of course, I read it like, I read it like, what was your part? I think there's the word mistake in there someplace. But if I had read mistake, I never would have done it. If it could say part, I was willing to. And what I've learned from that column is there's nothing that happens in my life that I don't have a part of. Nothing in my life that I don't have a part of. Even if my part is, this was something that happened to me when I was a little kid, and it shouldn't have happened to me. It shouldn't happen to little kids, and nothing was ever done about it or said about it, but it happened. Now, if I want to be free, I'm the one who has to do the work, not somebody else, me. But I can be free. I can be. I am guaranteed that if I'm willing to do my part. And I wanted to know what my part was in the cancer. So I got in a study, there were a group of the Al-Anons who said, we're going to do a step study with you. So they worked on their steps, I worked on my steps. And I got to the end of the step study. I was given a 60-40 chance of living another 5 years. So that was almost 40 years ago. She lived. She lived. And I came out of that step study knowing that living in active alcoholism was killing me, and I could not do it. The first time I realized I had to leave the alcoholic. And I told him that, and he waited. He couldn't believe I actually meant that, so that took a couple of months, but then he left. And if you ask him why he left, he'd tell you it was my crazy daughter, that anybody who lived with her would have to drink. She didn't make me want to drink. She made me want to leave home. She was adolescent, and she had started going crazy in the 8th grade, which turns out to be the same spring I was doing chemo. She was into drugs and alcohol. And my daughter is an alcoholic. She could let the drugs go, but the alcohol, no way. I thought she was just crazy. Really, she did crazy things. She had crazy friends. I couldn't keep up with her. I thought she was just crazy. And then, how did I? So then one day what happened, I know, they called from school and they said, there is something the matter with her. Duh. And they said, we're going to send her to a treatment center for an evaluation. You are? 3 days later, the guy calls, says, Miss Davis, hate to tell you this, but we do believe your daughter's alcoholic. And I said, yes. And they said, we've not had a lot of parents react like that. And I said, it's alcoholism. I know what to do for alcoholism. I was afraid it was Al-Anonism, and there's no sign she'll get any help for that, She was 17 and I could make her do stuff. We have a thing in Al-Anon where we talk about we don't want to enable our children. We have to detach from our children. I believe that the only person I ever enable is me. Because I do and overdo for people because I'm afraid of how I'll feel if something bad happens to them. I'm enabling myself. One more time. But I have discovered in Al-Anon that there is a mom thing. Moms tend to have to do everything they can think of for their kids before they can let go of them. I had to do everything I could think of for her. And if that meant treatment, she was in treatment. She went into treatment. The guy at the treatment center looked at me when I went in to talk to him, and all he said to me was, "She wears you out, doesn't she?" And I cried and I cried. No one had acknowledged before what it's like watching somebody you've loved since before they were born kill themselves a day at a time. So, she got sober, and she got sober at me. She stayed sober about a year and a half, and then she started hanging out in slippery places with slippery people, and I just knew she was going to drink again. And I had gone through cancer, I'd gone through reconstruction, I'd gone through chemo, I'd gone through the surgery, I'd gone through everything, and I'd come out of that recognizing that nobody's going to find peace of mind for me. I have to find it for myself. I can't ask her to give me peace of mind. I got to find it. And I knew the only way I was going to have peace of mind is if she wasn't there. I had to have physical distance from her. And so I told her, if you can't go by the rules of the house, you can't stay. And she couldn't do it. I made the deadline the day that I was leaving to go to Crested Butte, Colorado, to the Crested Butte Mountain Conference. It's a week-long AA Al-Anon family conference that will happen again this summer. Yes! Please, God. Lee and I will be there. You could come visit us if you want to, and some other people too. Because I knew I needed help. I knew I was going to have to get some help if I did this. I didn't want to kick my daughter out of the house. I wanted her happy, healthy, home and whole, and she couldn't do any of that. She couldn't do any of that. So that morning while I'm packing my car, she throws herself across my bed and she goes, "Mom, you're going to be a grandma." She thought it was a cute way to tell me. I thought she was making me the responsible party again. Not, I'm going to be a mom, but you're going to be a grandma. She said later she thought that was a cute way to tell me. Well, it was not pretty for a little bit there. Finally picked up the phone, called my sponsor, and turned myself in. And she said, "Do you want her to stay?" And I said, "I don't, and I feel terrible about that. My 18-year-old daughter is pregnant, and I don't want her to stay here. I don't want her to stay here." She said, "Honey, there are only so many bad feelings in every relationship. Those are hers. Let her have them." She said, she doesn't have to stay there, and I'll stay on the phone while you tell her. The pain lessened. I thought the pain was about turning her out, but the pain was about holding on when it was time to let go. It's always in the resistance. And she moved out, which is euphemism for saying she only came in the windows after that. Anyway, children leaving is a process, not an event. We went through a difficult fall. She was telling people what a mean mom I was. She was pregnant. I wouldn't let her stay home. I told my friend, Buddy Ross, who was taping. I love the tapers. You get them trucked behind the table, and you can tell them just about anything. And I got Buddy behind the table, and I said, "Buddy, she's pregnant at me now," because it was still all about me. And Buddy said, "You know what? I know how you feel," but he said, "Our son's girlfriend had a baby out of wedlock, and the child has been the light of our lives." I love babies. I have always loved babies. I have 7 grandchildren and 8 great-grandchildren. My 4-month-old great-grandbaby came and played with Jean Mimi on Wednesday all from 11 to 6. I was just in heaven. I love babies, and God was offering me a baby, and I was doing the thing that separates me from sanity, which is yeah, but. Yeah, but. Not like this God, not today God, not my child God. My journey in Al-Anon has been the journey from yeah, but to thank you. Oh, thank you, God. Clint Hodges, who was an alcoholic man I adored and passed some years ago, but he said acceptance for him was thank you, God, for everything exactly as it is. I wouldn't change a thing. Now, I stumble sometimes with the I wouldn't change a things, but anyway, I said thank you for the baby. She's called me up and said I've had a sonogram. It's not one, it's two, because you know alcoholics. If one's good, we'll just have another. The second one was he changed my life in more ways than I can tell you. They moved in with me because I would have more peace of mind knowing where she was with those babies than where she wasn't. When they were 5 weeks old, she said, "Mom, I'm not going to keep them, and you can have them if you want them." She was going back out, and she knew she was going out. Went through a summer of them keeping them, giving them up, keeping them, giving them up, keep them, giving them up. And my sponsor said, "You know what?" She said, "You know, God wants for you what you want for you in your heart of hearts. The problem is I'm so afraid to choose. What if I pick something and I pick the wrong thing? Well, I picked this thing this week, and next week something fabulous comes along, and I can't have it because I picked the stupid thing last week. So I just don't make decisions. I let you make them. And I blame you when they don't turn out." She said, "Well, honey, one more time, you're a little confused. God is not a terrorist waiting around the corner to test your patience. God really wants you happy, joyous, and free." She said, if you will come to the idea of what you really want, what you think is best for you. See, I don't know what's best for you. I didn't know what was best for my daughter. I had no idea what to do for her. But my sponsor said, if you'll keep the focus on you and do what's best for you, I have a win-win God. I don't have a God who says I have to sacrifice so somebody else gets what they want. When God's involved, we both win. So if I pick out what I think is the best thing for me to do and I stick with that, it's going to be the best thing for you, whether you know it or not, or like it or not. It's going to be the best thing. And I said, you can't stay. So I decided what I wanted more than anything was to be a grandma. But I didn't want to raise any more alcoholics. I thought I was through doing that. And I went to adoption agencies and I said, I'm looking for a family that wants 2 babies and a grandmother. Because if you don't ask, you aren't going to get it. And a year later, almost to the day she told me she was pregnant, they let me pick the surrender date, and I picked the day I was going to Crested Butte to be with 600 of my closest friends. It was the hardest day of my life up to that point. And my children and me went to Lutheran service and turned our babies over to their new parents. From then on, there wasn't a month that went by that we didn't have dinner or lunch with those boys. One day a month. They lived 75 miles north of us. They got a little girl, and they said, guess what? She doesn't have a grandma. Pick me, pick me. So I got another baby in the bargain. Things were okay till high school came along, and then it started getting a little dicey. The family didn't know about the disease of alcoholism, and they didn't want to know. So it came calling. The boys got out of high school, and they hot-footed it to Dallas as quick as they could. I think he was 19, the older one by 30 seconds, and he said, I don't understand this thing about... He said, I didn't have my first drink till graduation night. And he said, I got beer in my refrigerator. I can take it or leave it. It's no big deal. 3 years later, he's in prison, a convicted felon. Drugs and alcohol. He went back to prison in September of 2016. Alcohol. So I got to go quick right here. So after the babies left, I decided I'd date. I've never dated before. I hunted. I decided I wanted to date. I wanted to see if I could be me, regardless of what I thought he wanted or needed. Could I just be me? So I picked this guy out. He wasn't in the program, and I knew I was not going to get involved with someone who didn't have some history so we could speak the same language. And so he didn't, though, but he was funny, so I thought that would make up for it. And he was my experiment, and I experimented with him, and it was interesting. Usually 6 months, and I've nailed him, you know. This was like 5 years we dated. We dated 2 years or so, just blah, blah, blah. we'd walk up to the door home from a date, and he'd hit me on the shoulder, and he'd go, "See ya." Call my sponsor, something is desperately the matter with one of us. She said, "Well, I don't think it's you." Okay, but usually they're making a move by now. Anyway, the upshot of it is, I loved him. I loved him. I loved him. And I told him I loved him before he told me, a year before he told me. He said, because I had said to my sponsor, I said, "I think I better break up because I'm starting to care about him." And she said, "Are you willing to go to the end of your life and you don't know the answer to that question?" And I said, "No, but it's so scary." She said, "It'll be even scarier if you don't try." So I told him, and I knew that if the relationship didn't grow, it would die. And I knew that was my part, was to tell him I loved him. And he was an attorney. And when I said I love you, it was very quiet for a little while, and then he said, "What does that mean?" Anyway, we got married. My sponsor married us. And he was drinking, but I didn't think he was alcoholic because he always came home when he said he'd come home, and that's my guideline right there. They come home, I'm all for it. Okay. The fact that he backed into someone's car backing out of our driveway because he didn't want to spill his wine, no problem there. But he hung out with you because he had to, because I hang out with you. And 2 years after we married, he walked up to the podium and said he was an alcoholic and took a chip. And he never drank again. Never drank again. Man, that was fun. Living with a newly sober guy is so fun. Except he would come home from a meeting and he'd say, "You know what I heard in the meeting today?" And he'd tell me something, and I'm thinking, I told you that 4 years ago. But Al-Anon taught me to go, "Oh, really?" Fine. Yeah, so here's the, I don't know how much time, he didn't tell me. Okay, you're tricking me. Okay. Because I don't want to go into Steve. So, here's what happened. In October of 2013, the younger twin, Cameron, the one who made all the difference, died in a one-vehicle accident driving drunk. First question his brother asked when he found out he had died was he drinking? Was he drinking? In September of 2016, well, somewhere in there, sometime before Cameron, right around the time Cameron died, my daughters slipped. I can't tell you when it happened. I can't tell you where she slipped. I only know she fell. She'd been sober 17 years, I think, by then, because she came back into Alcoholics Anonymous in 1990. I had nothing to do with it. You had everything to do with it. And I don't know what happened. I can't tell you. I only know where she fell. And it was alcohol again. She got addicted to prescription drugs, pretty soon gave those up, back to alcohol again. Tried desperately to get sober. Came to AA every day. Could not get sober. She just couldn't do it. We paid for full-blown inpatient treatment because Mama had to do one more thing she'd never done before. And they told me there, people who've had long-term sobriety and they lose it, seldom are able to get long-term sobriety again. And she couldn't do it. And when Cameron died, she went over the edge. She had married and had 2 little boys, and 2 more little boys, and they divorced, and then she had married an AA guy, and they were trudging the road, and then it all went to hell. I don't know what happened, but it went to hell. And she attempted suicide the week after Cameron died. And it just got, for the next 3 years, it just got darker and darker and darker and darker for her. We had taken her 2 younger boys in the summer of 2013 because my husband said, "We can't leave the boys out there. Police are being called. We got to get the boys out of there." They were 13 and 15 at that point. And I said, "Great, let's get the boys." And she said, "Fine, take them for the summer." She was sure she'd be sober by September and they could go back to school. But it didn't happen. It didn't happen. One of them still lives with me. He's 24. I adore him. He is very tall. Do you know what I do with tall people? There are all kinds of things. I need tall help. And here he comes. He's working. He's doing fine. So anyway, she attempted suicide. So anyway, then we get to Anthony, the older twin, going into prison for a year. They sent him to a judicial treatment center. They were going to try to let him catch alcoholism in prison if he could. I don't know that he did. I will tell you that he is sober today. He slipped again early on, but then they he was on probation, and he still has. It's been 5 years. The ankle monitor and the drug patch and the blowing in the car to get it started. He's still doing that. But they have just told him that they're clearing him for freedom, for release. So in another month, he may actually be a free man again. They force-fed out AA to him for a year, but that was all he went, was the year that was mandated. I don't know what's going to happen. I learned it with my daughter. I certainly know it with my grandsons, that the best way for me to love them is from a distance. Because if I love them up too close, I need them to be different so I can be okay. If I love them at a distance, he says to me, he'll send me a card and he'll say, "You're the best grandma ever. I know there isn't anything that I can do that you aren't going to support me and love me." And that's the truth, but I have to do it from a distance. From a distance. September of 2016, when he went to prison, my husband was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia and given 4 to 6 months. January came. My daughter had breast cancer when she was 39. And that's a lovely story. I'm not going to tell you, but it's a lovely story. All about the program. It was great. But she was in a place where she no longer had a job, she no longer had insurance, she couldn't, and she absolutely could not surrender, absolutely could not. So the cancer was back, and it was bad. She couldn't talk about it. We still had the boys. She told me at Thanksgiving, she said, "Mom, I think it's everywhere, and I don't know what's going to happen." She was 47. And then I didn't hear from her again until around Christmas time. And then we saw her for a little bit. But on January 17th of 2017, my daughter took her own life. She tried to drink herself to death, and her tolerance for alcohol is just too high. She couldn't do it, so she had to do it another way. I don't begrudge my daughter that for one single second. I can't imagine the pain she must have been in to leave her boys, whom she adored. But she couldn't face what was ahead, and she had, AA and Al-Anon teach us not only how to live, but how to die. I watched one sponsor die. I've watched this sponsor go through her spouse dying. And I know what it can be like if you've still got the support of the program underneath you, but she didn't have that. 3.5 weeks later, my husband died. 5 weeks after he died, the one, the only, Mason Taylor Rodriguez was born, my great-grandson. He's my rainbow boy. He was my promise from God that it'll never be that bad at all again. I have spent the years since they died. The first couple of years you guys were so wonderful. I'd go someplace where there was a gathering of people in our area, and these women would come to me and they'd say, "Can I tell you what your daughter did for me when I was new sober? I wouldn't be here today if it hadn't been for her." And when I realized that there's a little light of my daughter that lives in each of those people, and the ripple that she left continues, and I am so grateful that I got to be her mom. What are the chances? What are the chances? I wouldn't have stayed in Al-Anon if she hadn't been my child. And Dick Cassidy. How in the world did I get to be Dick Cassidy's wife? That is nothing I earned, I assure you. That was nothing but a gift. Wouldn't have stayed in Al-Anon if I hadn't married him. Anyway. We used to tease each other because we both thought we'd married above ourselves. The nurse in the hospice room was a sober member of AA, and she said, "It gives me such pleasure to be able to help him." She was so pleased with his sobriety. have lived in depths of gratitude and grief. And grief is what adults do. We grieve something every day. We grieve a pen we lost. We grieve a friend we lost. We grieve an old idea that finally died. We grieve something every day. But there is a line in a book, in an Al-Anon book, that says, if we will face our losses openly and willingly, we will find in ourselves a resilience we didn't know we had. Not in spite of, but because of. Because of. I walked through that. And now I am, the last 2 years have been, I'm a very talkative introvert. I loved being home. I'm just fine. Just leave me home. I don't have to put pants or shoes on. Don't even have to put lipstick on, That's been great. But I'm ready to get back in the world. I'm ready to see you again. I'm ready to be with you again. I used to think that when I died and went to heaven, God was going to say, pull out the VCR and the tape, and I want to know how her husband and her children turned out. And if they turned out to be fine, upstanding members of the community, she's earned her way into heaven and she can come in. I'm so grateful you let me find another God. I think when I get there, God's going to greet me like my Al-Anon friends greet me when I walk in the room. He's going to go, oh, Ellen, there you are. And he's going to say, you know what, precious, heaven's heaven when you're not here, but it's just not perfect without you. And he's going to say, I've been running a little experiment. It's nothing you could pass or fail. It was just an experiment. And I know you've been paying attention, so I want to ask you some questions. And the first one is going to be, did you have a good time? I didn't do a single thing to torment you. I did everything I could think of to make you happy and joyous. There was no reason for flowers to be different colors, except I thought it'd make you smile. And I knew you'd love babies. So I hope you didn't miss any of them. Because of you, up at Crested Butte one year, one of the bus drivers was driving us to something, and he said, we just love it when you guys come to the mountain. Number one, no one falls off drunk. Number two, you have such a good time. Because of you, I can say, yes, God, I had a great time at your party. Thanks for asking me. And the second thing he's going to say is, were you Ellen? You were the only one like that I made. I had things for you to do because my voice is too loud and my hands are too big. That scared me at first because I've spent so much of my life trying to be what I thought other people wanted me to be. I don't know whether I was Ellen or not. So in my nighttime inventory for some years, I wrote, today, Ellen. And I wrote down what I did that day that I knew was for me to do when I was doing it. This was mine to do. Not for this long. I'm so sorry, Steve. But after a few years, I looked back at that, and about 95% of what I wrote down you would call service work. I knew every time I was doing service work, I was right where God would have me be. And the last one is going to be, honey, did you ever get the joke? Did you ever get the joke? I got the joke the year of cancer, standing at the back door of my house with no hair, so attractive, everywhere in your body, and body part missing, and 60-40 chance of living another 5 years, a husband who said what's for dinner and might not come home for a week, and a hot pink neon orange daughter who was living over the edge someplace. And I got ready to go out and buy something to plant in the yard, and I looked down and realized I had to go back and shave my legs. All the hair on my body, except on my legs. And I laughed till I cried. And I could hear God in heaven going, gotcha. It's been a big setup, but I gotcha. I recognized for the first time what one day at a time means. Right this minute, I'm okay. Right this minute. Whatever I need, God brought to this moment for me to have. I've never reached a moment in my life where I didn't have exactly what I needed to walk through it. I might not have had it 5 minutes earlier, but I have it when it's time. May you find him now, not last week or next week, but now. You gave me my now. A guy in our group says the glass isn't half full or half empty, the glass is just too big. Other guy said the glass is either half full or half empty, depending on whether you're drinking or pouring. The magic of what happens here, somehow, when I pour, when I sit down, I'm the one whose cup overflows. And I thank you.